Over 100 members of the National Guard activated, a state attorney general weighing legal options, lawyers calling for a federal criminal investigation. That's the scene in Massachusetts, an unlikely front in an ugly immigration standoff. It began when 3 Republican governors took it upon themselves to transport migrants to Democratic-leaning hubs up north, including Martha's Vineyard. Texas sent thousands of migrants to New York City, and here's what New York Mayor Eric Adams told CNN about the situation.
We should be clear that this is, as I stated, a humanitarian crisis created by human hands, and it is an all hands on deck moment where we're all supposed to come together and coordinate. Coordination during a crisis is something that we must do together, and that's the federal government, that is also the governor of the state of Texas, as well as the governor of the state of Florida.
Let's bring in CNN political commentator and former Obama administration official Van Jones and former Republican Congresswoman Barbara Comstock. Van, we just heard the mayor of New York City there talking about how, you know, at the very least, they're just not getting any kind of coordination with these governors before these folks these migrants are dropped off in this fashion. What do you make of what these Republican governors are up to?
Well, I mean, it's really shameful. You know, there is a way to handle something like this. Look, I think we need more immigration, not less. I mean, if we could get more people here working, it would probably help with inflation and everything else. But there is an orderly way to do it. Unfortunately, there's a complete breakdown. And what you need in a situation like this is for someone like DeSantis to convene the governors so he could use the National Governors Association, a bipartisan group, and say, look, we can't do anymore. We need your help, and you coordinate it. That's not what they're doing at all. They're just doing these stunts and these ambushes, which they're basically trying to score political points. They're making a point. They're not solving the problem. And so it's actually, they're kind of, I would say, you know, using or even pimping the pain of the border towns that do need help. They're not solving that problem, but they're now just, you know, making these political grand gestures, which I think are really, it's really disgusting.
Barbara, what do you think? I mean, this is obviously not a solution to put people on a plane or on a bus and send them to who knows where. Why not offer solutions, like Van is saying?
Well, ironically, Charlie Baker, a Republican governor of Massachusetts, made the very point that Van was just making. He said we need workers in Massachusetts, and he thanked his fellow Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, for sending the free help, the asylum seekers, sending them to Massachusetts because they need service workers, as so many states across the country do. And we need to have solutions to immigration. We need to have immigration reform. And I can tell you in 2018, when many Republicans, Carlos Curbelo, a Republican from Florida, Will Hurd, a Republican from Texas, when they came together, and I supported them, to have immigration reform, ironically, it was a bill that Donald Trump even said he would sign. Of course, Ron DeSantis was part of the Freedom Caucus who opposed it because the Freedom Caucus always wanted to have issues rather than solutions. So I think a great thing for President Biden would be to convene people like Charlie Baker, like a Will Hurd, like a Carlos Curbelo, and call the bluff of governors like Governor DeSantis and say, let's sit down with people like Charlie Baker, one of the most popular Republican governors in the country, people like Will Hurd and Carlos Curbelo. Let's bring them together on the border and say, let's work on those solutions that these people actually really want to work on. Get the Chamber of Commerce that wants to have a solution on immigration reform, because we have so many service jobs. We need more nurses. We need more legal immigration in this country. And I think you'd find a lot of Republicans who want to help in that regard.
Right. There are people in both parties who want to treat these migrants humanely, in addition to getting them jobs. Just treat them humanely.
Yeah, these were
like
asylum seekers. Yeah, and
right.
These are asylum seekers from Venezuela, where Republicans, I thought Republicans were supposed to support asylum seekers who are fleeing countries like Venezuela, where we've opposed what's going on in Venezuela, and we welcome asylum seekers, and we should be. And I think you would find a lot of Republican governors and members of Congress who would support that.
And we were making that point yesterday on this program, exactly. Van, let's switch gears. Former President Trump held a rally last night for Ohio Senate candidate J.D. Vance, and here's what the Trump endorsement looks like these days. Let's listen.
The New York Times did a fake story today, big front page, that J.D. wasn't sure if he wanted my support. J.D. is kissing my ass. He wants my support. This is a great person who I've really gotten to know, Yeah, he said some bad things about me, but that was before he knew me, and then he fell in love.
Yeah, Van, I mean, the conventional wisdom says that, these election deniers and Trump-aligned Republicans are helping Democrats in November. Are you worried that the party, that your party, needs to get as enthusiastic as some of these Trump rallies have gotten? I mean, you look at what took place last night, some of it was a little strange, but they do see a path through motivating the base.
Hey, listen, the more Trump wants to make himself the issue and put himself in the middle of it, the better that is for Democrats. I mean, it's an amazing kind of thing for you usually in a situation like this when you have the crime and economic problems that you have, you just want to leave it as a referendum on Biden. Trump just can't help himself. He just has to be the center of attention. And so the reason that he is showing up there is because J.D. Vance is not doing as well as he should be doing in a mostly red state. But basically, Donald Trump becomes, he thinks he's throwing a life raft, he's throwing an anvil. Because the more you make it about Trump and the more you have Donald Trump saying, this person is in my pocket so much he's kissing my you-know-what, look, that may be great for a rally. It's not really great for an election. And so look, the more that Trump wants to make himself the center of it, I think the better it is for Democrats.
Yeah, Barbara, I mean, what do you think? Was that helpful to J.D. Vance at all?
I thought that was an in-kind contribution to Tim Ryan, the Democrat. I mean, it made J.D. Vance look like a mouse, not a man. It was humiliating. And that rally last night, it was a QAnon fest. It was playing this strange QAnon music. They were all sort of, bowing to, I think Marjorie Greene was there talking about the one true leader they have to be loyal to. And it actually was not very well attended. It wasn't the usual, so I think this is a dying, the last gasps of a dying cult, not I do think this is an embarrassment. And if I were, J.D. Vance is really a shell of a person to be there bowing and scraping to somebody who he rightfully attacked, just a few years ago. And those, statements are out there publicly. And I think the best thing for Tim Ryan would be to put his prior statements where he attacked Donald Trump and then Donald Trump last night talking about how he's, kissing the orange one now and bowing and scraping to him, because that's not a man that you want to have in the U.S. Senate, because it's not someone who will stand up for Ohio. It's somebody who's going to be kissing the guy in Mar-a-Lago and bowing and scraping to whatever he wants.
And Van, Democrats are leaning into the abortion issue ahead of the midterms. California Governor Gavin Newsom has been leading the charge on some of this. He put up billboards in 7 red states advertising abortion services in California. They say things like Texas doesn't own your body, you do. Smart politics, what do you think? Is this smart for Gavin Newsom to be doing?
I think it is, and I think it's sincere. I've known Gavin Newsom for 20 years. He's a fervent believer in women's rights and women's right to choose. And I do think that this is an issue that is cutting very, very strongly for Democrats, even independent and some Republican women. The Republican Party has just become so extreme on the issue. I think most people are still, honestly, where Bill Clinton was in the 90s. They want abortion to be safe and legal and rare. That's my position. I think that's most people's position. But when you start going out there saying that rapists have to have the child of the rapist and all this crazy stuff and no exceptions, and you hear all these horrific stories coming forward, what it does is it shows the Republican Party doesn't have the character and the judgment to deal with something this nuanced, and they're running to these extremes. And so I think the Democrats are now becoming a safe harbor for people to say, let's at least let these very difficult decisions between a woman and her doctor be handled with some grace, some nuance here. And so I do think that I appreciate what Gavin's doing.
And a quick final thought from you, Barbara. What do you think? Have Republicans overreached on this issue?
Well, I think the problem has been that the Republicans' message has been very mixed, and that was highlighted this week by Lindsey Graham coming out and talking about a national bill when Republicans have been saying, that once the Dobbs case came, it was going to be returned back to the states, and there could be, different positions in each state. And Republicans had historically been for obviously exceptions for life of the mother and rape and incest. Certainly that had been my experience when I was in Congress and when I was also in the State House, and there had been compromise on these issues, and then you have seen these extremes, and as Van discussed. So because of the mixed messaging, because of a lot of extreme candidates and actually many men who didn't know what they were talking about in these issues, it's been a problem. Right. And so I think the mixed messages has driven away independents and Democrats at a time when Republicans, in order to win back Congress and certainly in these swing districts and states, needed to have, be able to reach independents and Democrats that they are losing on this issue.